Hello, welcome to the Gamers Table, a podcast discussion of tabletop role-playing games, war games, movies, books, and various other game-related topics. Be warned, this show contains some explicit material that may not be suitable for all audiences.
Hello and welcome to Gamers Table. My name is Eric.
This is Mike.
This is Mark.
This is Jason.
And I'm Sean.
This episode we're going to discuss NPCs for people who don't know what that means.
Yeah. Which is, it's sad that we don't have Dan because he definitely would have had some opinions on NPCs.
That's true. It's true. Yes, we're going without Dan this time.
His kitchen exploded.
Well, it happens, I guess. NPCs, non-player characters, the characters that aren't controlled by the actual players themselves, controlled by the game master, dungeon master, referee,
Storyteller.
Storyteller.
Hence non-player character.
Right. So
Entourage.
Like Turtle and all those guys.
Sure.
Would Turtle have
Johnny
been
Drama.
a non-player character, or would he have been a player character?
Well, no. If we were playing Entourage, then we would all be the guys in Entourage.
Right. 'Cause
Would-
Jason would definitely be Turtle.
No. I think, well, that's fine. You can be drama.
Does that mean Vince would have been the NPC?
Probably.
Because if you think about it,
Yeah.
if you're playing if you're playing a game
Yeah.
and the basis is all around the supporting cast around a central guy, someone playing that central guy would have too much power over the rest of the players.
So is this the agent?
Yeah.
I've never watched an episode of Entourage.
Same here.
God, dude.
You watch the show for the agent. Yeah, because it's
Jeremy Piven.
Jeremy Piven. I want to say Jeremy. That's the guy I used to do karate with.
No, it's not him.
No, not that. Well, and we are already off track. Okay.
Yes, we certainly are.
All right.
So anyway, yes, we're going to talk about non-player characters, what makes a good one, what makes a bad one. What's the thought process, Mike, from coming up with one? Are ones that you come up with off the fly better than ones you have plan and plot with, things like that? And as players, which do you prefer? Which, without getting too specific, what kind of a NPC kind of stands out whenever you think about good NPCs, things like that?
Definitely can't overthink NPCs when you're designing them because the players will always ruin or not take to what you've written. I think, in my experience, the best NPCs that the players like are the ones that are, yes, off the cuff, and then slowly develop from there.
It's kind of like you think it's the players kind of feel like it's too contrived when
Possibly.
Yeah.
Or the better the game master knows that NPC when you first meet him, the more suspicious you are of that.
Right.
yeah.
And it's
always.
more likely that
Yeah, the old, what's his name? His name is blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, he already has his name figured
Yeah,
out.
if Mike's put too much effort into that NPC, you fear that NPC.
'Cause he
Because
probably-
he don't want him killed.
the
So
more extravagant he
no matter
is.
how hard you try to kill him, he's going to get away.
But Mike has played with that before.
Yes, he has.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's had a guy, had a character that, he's just a nobody.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Like the
thinking
hacker
of
in
Andrade.
Shadowrun.
Andrade, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
Andy.
He acted like he was the
God.
retarded dude hanging out, and it was really some evil
I think
priest.
that was Kaiser Soze before
Usual Suspects came
Yeah,
out.
that's true. Because he got us all. I mean, I think some people figured it out before I did, but I think that might be because Mike was telling everyone but me.
He never told me. He never told me.
No.
But
I didn't even know who Andrade was at the time because that was all stuff that happened when you guys were playing when I was in the military.
That's before I met any of you dudes.
So, but yeah,
That's D&D.
That's D&D. You can play off of that. A good game master can, if your players know you well enough that you come up with a name for a guy and, they think, oh, well, this guy already has a name, unless you're like me, because what I'll do is I'll populate an entire town and have names and backgrounds and stuff.
This is the dude that, for a Star Trek game that we never even played, had a name and a backstory for every member of the crew.
There's like 367 people
Yeah.
in the crew.
wow.
And we never played that game.
No, we didn't.
But I had names and races and backgrounds for all of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
How'd you generate that?
Up here in my head, man. I didn't. It was just one of those things where, like, I want to have this person in this position, and it was one of those things where I could pull out certain positions and insert PCs if I wanted to, and that way I could see they could all interact with their crew. Because if you're going to play a Star Trek game, playing a phaser bank enlisted man would be pretty freaking boring.
Yeah.
But if you would probably play either the crew chief there, or you would play the chief of security or chief of operations or something like that. And then I wanted to have rosters for everybody under them.
It would have been great.
Would have been, yeah. But then nobody really wants to play Star Trek.
I'll play the shit out of some Star Trek, but I'm alone in my opinion.
I'll play
Trekkies.
Star Trek. I don't have a problem
Damn
with Star Trek.
Trekkies.
I want to be the bartender.
Yeah, see, that's the
Hey.
that therein lies the problem. See, you have people who are really into playing a game, and then you have people who really are not. And
Mike's never
I've
really
been the
into
captain before.
playing.
What are you talking about?
and how did that work out?
Didn't we kind of force you into being captain just to...
We're going we're way off the track. Here.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. As far as NPCs go, in my opinion, I think the NPCs that I despise the most are those that are forced upon us.
Okay.
They become entirely too familiar. Specific examples that I can think of right off the top of my head would be Valkon's, I don't know what you'd
Of
call
course, he
him.
mentions Valcon first.
Well, I'm
Valkon's
going
what?
back. I'm going back.
When
Valkon's.
you have a long history of stuff like that.
Are you talking about villain NPCs?
No. I'm talking about a henchman, basically, that worked for him. Falstan.
Yes.
Hated Falstan. Because Mike played him like a dip, basically. I mean, he was supposed to be my second in command, the guy that,
He was like a bumbling guy.
he was just kind of like, no, it was just like he was a dingaling. I mean, I had to literally draw him a picture for everything that I wanted him to do. I know that was just Mike. That was just the way Mike was playing the guy, and it just drove me up the wall.
Now, Mike, was that a conscious decision to make him like that, or did it kind of happen and you just ran with it?
Mike probably don't even remember that.
No, I don't remember that.
Probably did
but
it just to mess with Jason.
the
Right.
fact that Jace remembers means it was a good NPC.
Well, that's true.
Well, and he ended up redeeming himself. Mike made him die a heroic death.
Did you feel sorry when he died?
Kind of, but in the end, I was just kind of like, oh, good, he's gone. But no, but the characters that the NPCs that I think we've always been really attached to are those random people in the crowd that just kind of ended up
filtering to the top.
and we just started giving them details and interacting with them, and
Right.
I have a good example of NPC that starts from almost nothing and then becomes a very popular NPC, Shadowrun. Everyone
Okay.
starts with a bunch of contacts. Sometimes they just
Yeah.
start as a name. Some of them you never use but once, and then some of them become the most well-known NPCs we know, and sometimes you never meet them. It's all over the phone,
Right.
Right.
Pink Panty
and
Granny.
Pink Panty Granny is a good example of that. That was just, a case of
Start without me. Shows up 5 minutes later.
what a dick. What a dick.
And Dan's here.
And this is Dan.
So anyway, Pink Panty Granny was a good example of
Oh, God, I could have stayed out for that.
There's
Let's see. This is why I said we know Dan's going to have opinions on NPCs.
was one of those things where I just kind of came up with a name off the top of my head. Somebody said I need a fixer name, and I don't know where I came up with it.
A normal man's mind would not go to this place.
Well, true, but
It's a Brad Pitt quote, I think, from Seven.
wearing his grandma's panties is what he
Right.
says, and I'm pretty sure that's where that came from. Yeah, it's just that something ran through my head and I said it, and that ended up being one of the more memorable. And it wasn't memorable because of the name.
No,
It
because
was-
you had a full description,
Well, and I kind of go out of my way sometimes to gross you guys out.
Oh, yeah.
which is
So-
sometimes, yeah.
But I think that a good NPC, if you come up with one on the have a name or something, but then you give the NPC a little bit more personality at the table, you can gauge kind of what is working and what's not.
It always seemed to me that the guys, the players, would make certain assumptions based on your introduction of an NPC,
Right.
as a game master.
Let me give you a good
And then
example.
you could take those assumptions and do whatever with them.
Let me give you a good example. In the actual play that we're doing now, the actor that you're looking for, Merriweather,
Yeah.
never intended him to be a halfling. never intended him to be a halfling. So it's somebody said, I think it was Jason said, it sounds like a halfling name, and I was like, it does sound like a halfling name. Okay, now he's a halfling.
I was wondering, I was like, a bodyguard? Really?
Well, it's a good thing we didn't come up with some like elvish assassin name.
Yeah. Well, that's
But no, so I mean, I never really fleshed that character out. I knew what I wanted to do, and I know where I want to go with him. So I took details from the table talk and incorporated it in, and that's I think what you need to do to make it a shared story experience. If your NPCs are rigid and you want to play them how you want to play them, and the players just aren't receptive to it, then you're essentially not letting them have input in their world.
I agree.
So what do you think, Dan, about NPCs?
Well, in what context? Because I know what he's getting at here. He's getting at my
Well, you
hatred
we
of
all
NPCs.
know that Dan hates NPCs in the group.
I think that NPCs in the group is a crutch for
Weak playing.
No. It's
a crutch for the guys who don't want to play a priest.
Right.
Right.
People don't want to pay their dues, or let's make this perfect group that has no weaknesses. Let's just hire out our NPCs, and that's just kind of lame to me.
No, I think Dan's biggest problem with NPCs is when some of us start attracting an entourage of followers.
Which Jason likes to do.
I'm not the only one.
We all do that. and sometimes we do it just to spite Dan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It did get a little fun there for a while.
Well, in Sea Princess, just about every night we played, didn't we always hire a new guy?
Well, see, I think that's one of the exceptions to the rule, because Dan, you don't seem to mind.
No, because the ship is a campaign setting.
Yeah, it's a mobile.
It's
setting.
not.
Well.
The crew is not the group. The group
Right.
is the handful of us, and you incorporated the woman Scar.
Right.
Also, despite me, because woman shouldn't be on the ship. Just ask the captain. He knows.
But okay, so we're talking about NPCs in the group. There's a few cases where an NPC can actually outshine the players at the table, the player characters. Then there's also the super NPCs that game masters sometimes plug into.
Oh, yes.
That seems to be very popular with you and
Yes.
Shadowrun.
Yeah, but he inserts them in such a way that the group is not dependent upon that NPC for survival.
I don't know if I'd say we're not dependent upon them. Some of them we are. Kong, we weren't dependent upon Kong.
Well, he was our employer.
Yeah, that's different.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, but he set him up to be such a.
Well, see, that's because there's always someone better than yourself.
Right. Sure.
And in Shadowrun, that should not only be the case, that's the rule.
You're talking about Clean Steve?
Right.
I'm talking no, not even that. That was a
Spagoli.
one-time thing. I'm talking about the game master who has his own character.
Yes.
Who is all of a sudden swoops in and saves the day all the time.
What are you pointing at me
Exactly.
for?
Uh-oh, Mike's been called out.
I'm just thinking back in the day in 7th grade when we all had our player characters and you had your non-player character, and that was Night Stalker, and he was your character to control.
Well, I think
and Mortellin too. I think was
That's right.
was also an NPC.
He went from
that you
NPC to
control.
PC.
When I was in high school, and I had my game group in high school, Matt would run our werewolf games, but he didn't want to be left out of the story. So he'd make a character. He would assign rules to our character creation. He didn't want us to have a clave. It's a big silver Bowie knife, essentially. So we weren't allowed to have those.
But he could.
He could.
Right.
So
Is that GM fiat, or is he just being a douche?
he just being a douche.
Okay.
yeah. So yeah,
He was very much the I'll take my ball and go home type of friend.
Hey, well, sometimes you got to take your ball and go home.
and not come back.
That's right.
Right. So he'd put us in a situation where the group's getting their ass kicked, and his NPC would swoop in and save the day with his clave.
Well, I think NPCs in general are kind of the glue that ties stories together, because the group, i.e. the players, have their own direction that they want to go, and that's how the GM kind of keeps things on course, or whatever goal that they want. You use the NPCs to tie the characters to the story.
Right.
Otherwise, the characters are going to have their own story, and it's only going to be whatever it is that they want it to be.
Like family members of a character?
Could be,
Driving force of the story.
Yeah.
Or if anything, just a rudder to direct the story in a certain direction.
Well, you have to have some kind of an emotional attachment. So that's where you get love interests or family members,
Right.
Or some reason to be invested into the plot.
Right. It's the MacGuffin. It's the thing that makes you want to go on an endless dungeon crawl.
Right.
It's like, what makes you want to go in there in the first place? Well, you're an adventurer. Why am I an adventurer?
Because it's adventurous.
Right.
That's like taking the story. That's advancing the story from like the roots of Dungeons and Dragons model. The old days it was you're in the dungeon because that's what you do. There is no why. You just do it.
Right.
The game was different back then. I mean, we've chosen to make the game what it is.
Right. It's much more sophisticated.
You get whatever out of it that you want to put in it. Some people want to run it as a tax simulation. Some people want to run it as a social simulation.
It always struck me as from the old D&D box set that it was very much a board game evolved. It's like, this is, rather than having, Mr. Mustard in the thing with the other thing,
That's a
Colonel
clue. That's a
Mustard.
clue reference.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I knew what it was. I was just trying to you must not have played that much.
Mr. Mustard. That's my next Shadowrun character. Yes.
Mr. Mustard.
You got to carry a thing with a thing, though.
That's right. His weapons are a candlestick and a rope.
Right.